The first guy that stood out from just like everything, frame, testing, and then what he put on in like the actual on-field movement skill drills was Lucas Van Ness. Maybe not the guy who got the most hype because, some of his numbers weren't great. 31 inch for 910 broad are like
this
whatever
is funny
numbers.
because when we were doing the podcast yesterday, it was sort of late in the day. It was after some of these things had started to come through, and at that point, all we had from Van Ness was size and then two underwhelming jump numbers.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this could be a problem. Like if this guy shows up and has a bad workout, now you're starting to get the sort of AJ Epinesa questions and that kind of thing. So it turned around, is what you're saying.
But then he goes 4.58 in the 40 at 272 pounds, which is an insane time. 1.6410 split at that size is tremendous. So that you watch his tape, and that is him. He gets off the line of scrimmage. Maybe he doesn't get too high up in the air off the line of scrimmage, but he gets off it. And then the 7.023 cone and 4.32 shuttle were two of the best times among any edges, and he's not just any edge. He is massive. Again, like 6'5", 272, 34-inch arms, 11-inch hands. The guy looks like Ivan Drago out there with just like from a size perspective. He's enormous. Like he is a long, explosive dude that I think those numbers really went to bat for him and how he wins that he can be a player at the next level now.
Nice. That's a big part of this is factoring in size when you're doing all these numbers.
Yeah.
Like there is a difference between moving 230 pounds over a certain speed and a certain distance at a certain height and moving 270, 280 pounds at that kind of size. Like the kind of adjusted speed score or explosiveness is an important thing to focus on.
Well, that was the other guy that I wanted to highlight here is Ade Adebaware, the Northwestern defensive tackle, who at 282 pounds, so everyone was focused on Nolan Smith, and we'll get to him, who ran a 4.39, but at over 40 pounds heavier than Nolan Smith, he ran a 4.49 40, had a 37.5-inch vertical, a 1.6-110 split, and a 10.5 broad jump.
That is alien stuff.
That's the best, that's the most athletic defensive tackle in maybe NFL history, from a testing perspective, at minimum. And the wild thing is, so that's 4.49. I was like debating this last night. How many pounds of just pure fat does he have to gain for his time to not look ridiculous still?
Yeah.
Like, because put, 30 pounds on this guy.
Well, like,
he still has to run like a 4.6 something, right? Like,
yeah.
And he'd be 310 then.
Like, everybody's losing their mind that Kalijah Kancey runs a 4.67, beats Aaron Donald, and all those. And those are two of the fastest, most ridiculous numbers we've ever seen. At, 281, was that what Kancey weighed in at? Same kind of area for Aaron Donald back when he did it. You're talking about a guy that shaved another 0.2 of a second basically off that. Like, he could put on a lot of fat and still maybe not be Kancey, but beat most other defensive tackles.
Yeah. Like, I'm just very curious. And I think that's why you're seeing him work out on the interior after playing at. So he was an edge guy.
So that's what I was going to ask.
Mainly.
Right.
At Northwestern. But, like, that size, that explosiveness, I on the interior can be a big problem. But he does have to probably gain 10 to 15 more pounds.
Has Aaron Donald to you sort of changed the way NFL teams potentially look at these guys that are 280, 285 and think we can play him inside? Like we've reached the point now in the league where you can isolate a guy on one gap. You don't have to worry about double teams as much. Everybody's not pounding the ball right up the middle, duo blocks constantly. You can get by at that size if you're good enough as a pass rusher and a penetrator. Like, forget rushing the passer. Simply play the game in the backfield.
Yeah, I still think that's very much defense coordinator dependent, right? Like, some DCs believe in that. Some are vehemently not going to and wouldn't even give Adebaware or Kalijah Kancey two undersized DCs.
Right.
They wouldn't even care. They're just off the – maybe not off the board, but they're like third-round grades because they're just not going to fit their scheme. So the ones that they are going to fit their scheme, though, they are going to be problems. The ones that allow these guys to just get upfield, which, Adebaware did not kind of have that, was not afforded that at Northwestern, whereas Kancey definitely was at Pittsburgh. The defenses that allow those guys to do that, these are two guys you want. They're two guys you want.
So let's talk about Nolan Smith, because he's the guy that's going to get a ton of the focus, the numbers that he put up, the kind of crazy workout. What do you make of him?
And it wasn't only he's one of the biggest strides here, not only for like what he put on numbers wise. It was 4.39, 1.5-2-10 split, 41.5-inch vertical, 10.8 broad jump at 6'2", 238. So like,
so first of all, what's the most impressive number from his thing to you? Because to me, it's the
10 split.
10 split,
That's
which
an
is
all-time 10
madness.
Yes, that is right up there. That's as fast. That's a wide receiver.
It's a full
cornerback.
tenth faster than like the sort of average of elite numbers for edge rushers, and a tenth when you're talking at a 10-yard split is a crazy amount of time.
I mean, I guarantee there are all pro corners. I haven't done any research, but there are all pro corners, all pro wide receivers that don't have 10 splits.
Yes,
right now in the NFL. So insane get off, and that you saw on tape. But then, like at the podium, the guy was intense. Like the guy loves football. He is going to do whatever it takes to play football, and talked about being the number one overall recruit, but then buying in at Georgia, and like you see it on his tape, like really backing it up. The fact that like at that size, he's one of the best run defenders in this draft class at 238 because he wants to be one of the best run defenders in this draft class. So yeah, this is a guy that I think coaches are going to fall in love with the more they talk to, and expect him to go higher than I think we've seen in mock drafts, being like a fringe back end first rounder. He's going up. He's getting drafted higher than that.
If it was choreographed, it was masterful, but I don't think it was. Where he was pissed on the broadcast after he ran his 40s because they were showing up as unofficial 4.4s.
Yes.
And he was like, I know I can run 4.3s. I've been training 4.3s. He was on the phone to whoever his trainer was or whatever. The guy was mad, and then it came up the official time 4.39, so he just got into the 4.3s.
That's pretty sick.
Like, if that was for the cameras, it was genius. I don't think it was, though. Like, we're talking about a guy who's this athletic and this explosive. Talk to me, though, about the size, because ultimately, talking 6'2", 230-something pounds, which is... It's at the edges of the extremes, right? It's smaller than Hassan Reddick, who was a problem when he came out size-wise, to the point where they tried to make him a linebacker.
Yeah.
Like, how much is that going to affect? And how much is the year that Hassan Reddick just had actually going to benefit a guy like Nolan Smith?
I think it is going to benefit him. I think just seeing proof of concepts are always helpful for NFL evaluators.
Immediate ones as well.
Yes,
like, this happened this year. It's directly applicable to this guy. That can't hurt.
And we've talked to Brandon. We talked to Brandon Staley earlier this week, and the last time I talked to him when he was on the pod, he says like they have comps of guys in the NFL for everything for each position that they like. Here's like the gold standard. So teams that want that like rush edge, like the speed edge, Hassan Reddick's the gold standard and looks just like Nolan Smith. So I think a lot of teams are going to be seeing that and being like, oh, that's a guy who we can. One of the best defenses in the NFL can find a role from. So can we. So Nolan Smith with those numbers, at 238, that's what you want to see if you think a guy can get by at 238 pounds off the edge. He has to test like this. We've talked about kind of the curve where it's like you're undersized, you better be up here from a testing level. You better be at the tippy top. If you're massive, you can be more in the average range. But if you are undersized, it better be at the tippy top. And if you're not, I don't want anything to do with you. Well, Nolan Smith's like as good as you've ever seen explosive numbers right there.
And it's another one of those things where I think when you start looking for reasons now to validate a guy, like before maybe you were looking for reasons to knock him. He's 238 pounds. That's not going to work. This is why. Here are the problems. Now all of a sudden you're going, okay, he's 238, but he just ran a 4.3, 1.5 split. He literally maxed out the vertical jump. All of the pegs, all of them. He maxed out the vert. Almost an 11-foot broad jump. Now you're going, well, all right, now let's look for some reasons to validate him. And suddenly you start going back to that number one overall recruit thing and going, see, this is a guy that's had pedigree the whole way. Like, all of a sudden it becomes another, like, reason to draft a guy high.
Yes. And it's what we just said about Ibarra. It's like 20 pounds on that guy. He's still running, what, a 4.5? Like, he's still putting up nasty numbers. So, not to say that I'd put any bad weight on, but, like, this guy, no matter what he's going to play at, is going to be an absolute freak.
By the way, I would be remiss to let yesterday pass without pointing out that there were multiple defensive linemen yesterday that ran slower than I did in jeans and a sweatshirt. Granted, they were carrying
let's get some weights
a
on
little
these guys.
bit more weight than I was.
So you have Siaki Ika at a 5'39".
Does he outweigh me by me? Is he two of me?
He is 335.
Almost
Two of you. We had PJ Mustafer, only 320. So
Okay.
Your speed score compared to PJ's speed score, not too dissimilar.
And
But
look,
I think those were the only two.
They were out there in, the Lycra, whatever, the stuff that the No Bull get up this year, and cleats.
And you were doing it in jeans.
That's what I'm saying. And just whatever these things are. Like, sneakers. I'm saying that's got to be worth at least 0.5 of a second.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, what you got to do now? You got to put on 160 pounds. And you got to test here next year. You got to gain a lot of weight this year.
So we do do your experiment of just see how much fat I can
exactly.
pile on over the next year and then see what the 40 is. I just wanted to make that point.
Yeah.
So who else stood out for workout numbers, Mike?
Well, I mean, Kalijah Kancey, 4.67.
Yes.
Great number. Didn't do anything else, but does he really need to? You can see it on tape. But I want to go to the linebackers now.
That's only, by the way, going to make the Aaron Donald comps worse from here on in.
It really is. But the thing was, under 31-inch arms, Aaron Donald has almost 33-inch arms at the same height. Like, that's the difference between those two. Aaron Donald, much stronger, much longer. Kalijah Kancey is just speed. Like, he's just quick, which becomes more difficult at the NFL level to win with just that. But the way he tested, like that explosiveness, that's tough to deal with.
He was one of the few guys to show up and measure bigger than his list weight. Not bigger weight-wise, but he was taller.
Height.
He was 6'1".
Never
He was supposed to only be 6 foot.
I cannot remember the last time I saw it happen.
Right.
But a few linebackers I want to hit on that I thought really upped their draft stock. One is Dorian Williams, 2-lane linebacker, 228. So he's already on the undersized. He's right at that back end of the PFF top 100, but he went 4.49, 33.5-inch for a 10-foot broad. Like, that is speed that you want to see when you are going to be a little bit on the smaller side. But he's got a unique frame too, 6 foot 10-inch wingspan at 6'1", 33.75-inch arms. So, short but really long, really still able to affect windows in the passing game. I think he's a guy who hasn't gotten talked about a ton, but I think you'll see more in the day two conversation as we go forward.
What do you think this linebacker class is like overall? We haven't gotten to that part yet. And generally, PFF poop,
trash, whatever you want to say. It's one of the worst I've scouted. I think going back to like 2015 when we first did this. I'm trying to think of a worse one, but there's just not a guy I'd go to bat in the first round. 2 guys I would even call second rounders at this point.
Are you noticing any trends when it comes to linebacker as a position in college coming through to the NFL? Because one thing that stood out to me earlier in the week when the linebackers were up on the podiums and doing all that kind of stuff, they're all tiny. They're thin. They look like DBs out there. Like, there's nobody who you used to be able to sort of basically pick the linebackers and the tight ends just from like a glance, right? They're huge. They're the guys that sort of look like superheroes. And then now tight ends are still like that. They're still monstrous. But the linebackers have become like a totally different body shape.
Yeah, a lot of sub-230 guys, which they're more often than not fool's gold at the NFL level. I think a lot of the short guys, you're seeing the struggles, especially in these light boxes in the running game and what they have to do. That I think guys like Jack Campbell in this draft class are going to get drafted higher than maybe a lot might think because of that, because he's one of the few which is like actual LB, middle linebacker, Mike linebacker size that can stack blocks and play in the run game at the NFL level. And so I think he helped himself a ton. Now, didn't run the greatest 40, 4.65. That's never his game, but like 6'7", 3.3 cone. Or excuse me, 6'7", 4.3 cone, 37.5-inch for 10.8 broad. Good explosive numbers, maybe not the best speed, but good explosive numbers and great change of direction ability. That's a guy who, I had the Logan Wilson was his draft comp, Wyoming linebacker, former Wyoming linebacker, Rip Wilson, Bengals linebacker. That's how he tested. That's how Jack Campbell tested. I think he's one of the safest linebackers in this class, and I'd be hard pressed to see him fall too far out of the top 50.
Is there anything to that sort of weird change in linebacker types, linebacker class strength, or if we just hit a random lull of talent, or are these guys now getting funneled to different positions earlier in their football careers?
I think this is kind of random because last year's class was really deep, I thought, and really talented. So I think it's kind of just a random lull, but I do think that it's a position that there's just not as many. Like you're getting 2 on a collegiate field, if not 1, more often than not. So there's just not a lot of guys playing that position. More, the guys who come into college now who are 205, 210 in high school are playing like the slot,
right.
At the collegiate level.